ever looked at an instructional design job posting and thought, that sounds interesting? Then kept reading, and somewhere around the third bullet point, you started thinking, yeah, they're definitely not talking about me. You see, this was me. A few months ago, I started researching instructional design as a possible career path. I was hearing more and more teachers talk about it. I kept seeing videos. I kept seeing people mention remote and hybrid roles. And I was like, honestly, it sounded pretty good considering what things are like as an educator in my world. If you know what it's like and you're a teacher, we are on from the moment we step into the classroom until after we dismiss students, and sometimes even more. The idea of helping people learn without grading papers, without state testing, without explaining to a student for the 10th time why they need to stop touching someone else's pencil sounds pretty appealing, right? So I started looking into it, and at first, everything seemed exciting until I started reading the job description. That's when the self-doubt kicked in, because suddenly I was seeing things like learning management systems. Okay, I'm somewhat familiar with that because we use a variety of these in the field of education. But then I see storyboards, performance improvement, adult learning, storyline, Addie. Well, I'm somewhat familiar with Addie because of my coursework that I completed from my instructional technology degree. But then I see e-learning development. And the more I read, the more I started thinking things like, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe they're looking for people with corporate experience. Maybe teachers don't really qualify. If I pursued this path, does this mean that I would have to start all over? Because if so, I'm most definitely not doing that. If you've ever looked at an ID job description and had any of those thoughts, this video is for you. Because here's what I found out after months of research. Teachers already do much of this work. In fact, many teachers are far more qualified than they realize. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. Here's the problem. Most teachers assume that transitioning into instructional design means starting over, completely over. Like, throw away 20 years of experience, learn a whole new profession, and pretend the classroom never happened over. And that's scary, especially when you've spent years getting really good at what you do. Think about what teachers actually learn over the course of a career. How to design learning experiences that actually work, how to write clear objectives, how to analyze data and identify gaps, how to adjust instruction for different types of learners, how to create materials from scratch on a deadline with a limited budget while also maintaining 20-something people in the room. No big deal, right? And then we see a job posting and think, well, none of that counts. But what if some of the skills you spent years building are the exact skills employers are looking for? Not all of them, but more than you think. If you're a teacher, parent, or creative who wants to turn your skill into real income, you're in the right place. I'm Ebony from Easy Street Teaching and Learning, and on this channel, I show you how to teach it, create it, and sell it. Let's get into it. Teachers often have a much stronger foundation than they think. So in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly where those skills overlap. By the end of this video, you'll be able to identify instructional design skills you already possess. Understand how teaching skills transfer into instructional design. Recognize common instructional design terminology. Identify skills you may still need to develop. Create a realistic next step if instructional design is a career you're interested in pursuing. And stick around to the end because I'm going to share the biggest thing that surprised me during this entire journey. And honestly, it wasn't storyline, it wasn't Addie, and it wasn't learning objectives. It was something much simpler than you think. So here's what changed everything for me. I stopped asking, can teachers become instructional designers, and start asking, what do instructional designers actually do? But sometimes the title sounds intimidating, but once you break the work apart, you start recognizing things, and that's when the light bulb came on for me. Let's start with lesson planning. Every teacher watching this has planned instruction. You know what I'm talking about. The main focus is always what? What does the learner need to know? Think about that for a second. Every lesson you've ever taught started with that exact question. What do students need to learn? What misconceptions might they have? How should I teach this? What examples should I use? How will I know they've learned it? Those are instructional design questions. In fact, before an instructional designer ever opens Storyline, they're usually working through many of those same decisions. The audience changes, the thinking doesn't. Instead of students, they may be designing learning for nurses, managers, sales teams, customer service representatives, new employees. But the goal remains exactly the same. Help someone learn something. That's why I stopped saying, I don't know instructional design, and started realizing, wait a minute, I've been designing learning for years. You see, this is what teachers do, and this is what IDs do. Design and deliver lessons for students. Identify what students need to learn. Choose how to teach it. Create the materials. And assess the outcome. Design and develop training for adult learners. Conduct a needs analysis. Choose an instructional strategy. Create the content and measure effectiveness. You see, different audience, same brain. The only real difference is that instructional designers get to use words like stakeholder and deliverable in meetings. You'll get used to using the terms in no time, I promise. The second thing that surprised me was learning objectives. Because instructional designers talk about learning objectives all the time, and honestly, teachers should feel pretty comfortable here. Think about how many times you've written, students will identify, students will compare, students will explain, students will analyze. That's a learning objective. Instructional designers do exactly the same thing. The only difference is the learner. Teacher version, ID version. Teacher version. Students will identify the main idea and supporting details in a non-fiction text. ID version. Employees will correctly complete the onboarding checklist with 90% accuracy by the end of the training module. Different learners, same structure, same thinking. So, you see, this is actually an area where teachers have a head start because we've been writing clear, measurable objectives for a long time. We just need to learn how to frame them for a corporate context. So here is the thing. Some corporate trainers have never taught deeply about cognitive levels or measurable verbs. Teachers have been doing Bloom's taxonomy since they were in their teacher preparatory program in college. That's an advantage. Use it. Now let's talk about the acronym that scares many teachers when they start researching instructional design. ADDIE. Now this kind of makes me laugh out loud because during my research, every article talked about ADDIE. Every course talked about ADDIE. Every instructional designer on any video that I watched talked about ADDIE. And I remember thinking, oh, great, another acronym to remember because teachers definitely don't have enough of those, right? There's RTI, MTSS, PLC, PBIS, EIP, IEP. Now we're adding ADDIE 2. But once I refreshed my memory, I was able to recall what ADDIE actually stands for. Analyze, design, develop, implement, evaluate. Now, let's translate this into teacher language. Analyze. Basically, this means what do students need? Design. This means what should I teach? Develop. Basically, create resources and activities. Implement. Teach the lesson. Evaluate. Did they get the content? Did they learn what they were supposed to have learned? That's ADDIE. Now, am I saying teachers are instructional designers? No, but I'm saying many teachers already think in ways that align with instructional design. And that's a much bigger advantage than most people realize. So far, we've talked about learning design, learning objectives, ADDIE. But the next three areas might actually be where teachers have the biggest advantage. Teachers live in data. So let's talk about data analysis, differentiation, and project management. Because this is where things started getting really interesting for me. Because for years, I sat through meetings where someone said, Use your data. And every teacher in the room had the exact same face. But here's the thing, whether we like it or not, we use our data all of the time. We analyze assessment results. We track progress monitoring. We look at student work and make judgments about where learners are and what they need to do next. You see, we use data so much that sometimes I feel like if I walk into a meeting without data, somebody is going to stop me at the door. But here's what surprised me most. Instructional designers use data too, just as much as we do. In fact, good instructional designers rely heavily on data. The difference is the questions they're asking. Teachers ask, why didn't this group master fraction? What's the gap? What do I need to reteach and for whom? IDs ask, why are employees making mistakes in this process? What's causing the performance gap? What training intervention is needed? Both roles are identifying a gap. Both roles are trying to solve a problem. The audience changes, the analytical thinking doesn't. Instructional designers call this a needs analysis. Teachers call it a Tuesday afternoon with a stack of exit tickets. Just so that you know, the fancy ID term is performance gap analysis. The teacher version is, why did half my class fail this test? Same question. One of those phrases looks better on a resume. I'm just saying. Let's talk differentiation, because this one is huge. And it's a place where teachers have a genuine advantage that most people coming from corporate don't. Teachers constantly adjust instruction based on who's in the room. Small groups, scaffolds, visual supports, vocabulary support, modified text, sentence frames, leveled materials, tiered activities. And if you're an ESOL teacher, you're doing next level audience analysis every single day. Over 60% of my class are ESOL learners. That means I am constantly thinking about, how do I make this content accessible? Who has background knowledge and who doesn't? What supports does this learner need that this one doesn't? Instructional designers call that audience analysis. They call it learner persona development. They call it accessibility and inclusive design. Teachers call it Tuesday. Seriously though, the ability to look at a group of learners, figure out where they are, adjust your approach on the fly is one of the hardest skills to develop. Most corporate trainers do not have it the way teachers do. That is your edge. Do not undersell it. Now this next one may be the most overlooked skill of all, project management. Because when most people hear project management, they picture someone sitting in front of a big computer using fancy software. But let's think about what teachers manage. Curriculum, assessments, parent communication, deadlines, interventions, meetings, field trips, progress monitoring, documentation, school events, professional learning. And somehow we still remember Pajama Day and Fun Friday. Teachers are constantly coordinating moving parts. Instructional designers do the same thing. The difference is that they may use tools like Asana, Trello, Monday.com, and Jira instead of sticky notes and pure determination. The tool is different. The responsibility is remarkably the same. Okay, let's keep it real, because that's what this channel is about. After all of this research, after studying job descriptions, after talking with instructional designers, after exploring the field myself, I realized something. There are things that teachers still need to learn to move into instructional design. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Here's the honest list: Articulate Storyline and Rise. These are the most widely used e-learning authoring tools, and they show up on almost every ID job description that I've seen. Learning Management System Administration. Not just using LMS, but understanding how to build and manage content inside one. Storyboarding. This is basically laying out e-learning content visually before you build it. Portfolio development. Because in ID, your portfolio is your resume. It's your evidence. It's your documentation. The business language of learning and development. ROI, return on investment, performance outcomes, stakeholder communication, and more. That's a real list. I'm not going to minimize it, and I need you to understand that this is okay. Nobody starts out knowing everything. I'm learning these things too. That's actually one of the reasons I'm documenting this journey. But here's what I want you to notice. Those are tools and vocabulary. The hardest stuff, the thinking, the design, the analysis, the ability to understand learners, you already have a foundation for all of that. Tools can be learned. Thinking, that takes years to develop. You're much further ahead of where you think you are. And here's some good news for you. Articulate actually offers a 60-day trial of Storyline and Rise. Many instructional designers, including professionals currently working in the field, built their first portfolio pieces using free trials and self-paced YouTube tutorials. That is a completely viable path, and it costs nothing to start. I'm just saying. Here's the thing that surprised me most. The biggest gap between teaching and instructional design isn't usually the skills, it's the vocabulary. We're doing the same things, but we're calling them completely different names. And when you walk into an interview using teacher language, the hiring manager doesn't always know how to connect the dots. So let me show you what I mean. Teachers say lessons and units. Instructional designers say training modules, course, or learning programs. Teachers say student outcomes and lesson plans. Instructional designers say performance outcomes or instructional design documents, storyboards. Teachers say intervention, differentiation. Instructional designers say performance support or audience analysis or learner variability. Teachers say assessment. Instructional designers say evaluation, knowledge check. Teachers say POC meeting, parent communication. Instructional designers say stakeholder collaboration, stakeholder communication. Teachers say using data to reteach, and instructional designers say formative evaluation, iteration. Same neighborhood, different street names, right? And once you know the translation, you can start telling your story in a way that hiring managers understand. Real talk, this was genuinely the moment where I stopped feeling behind. I wasn't missing experience. I was missing a dictionary. Once I learned the vocabulary, I started reading job descriptions completely different. And guess what? You will too. So if you're interested in instructional design and you want a quick reference of exactly how your teaching skills translate into ID language, I made something for you. It's a free Teacher to Instructional Designer Skill Translation Guide. It lays out the most common teaching skills side by side with the instructional design equivalent, so you can start talking about your experience in a way that gets noticed. The link is in the description area below. And in the next video, we're going deeper. We're breaking down the instructional design models that show up on every ID job description. And I'm going to show you exactly how they connect to frameworks teachers already use. Think about it. Some of them are Addy, Bloom's Taxonomy, Gagne's 9 events, Kirkpatrick's 4 levels of evaluation, and more. I think you're going to be surprised by how familiar it all feels. Until next time, teach it with purpose, create it with strategy, and build income with confidence the easy street way. And remember, dreams don't work unless you do.